A stranger called me Mom and saved my house. It was a sticky Tuesday in Stone Mountain. I just watered the twin ferns on my porch when my phone buzzed. Unknown Atlanta number. I almost let it ring out. Then I answered, Mom? Not drunk dial Mom. Careful Mom. Like the word might break. Who is this? Darius. I'm at a closing table in Midtown. For your condo? Willow Run, B12? Paperwork says your daughter has power of attorney. The notary stamp looks real. The signature doesn't. Miss Leela, are you selling today? I looked at my little porch, my mailbox, the doormat that says bless this mess. 3 weeks ago, my daughter slid me an envelope. It's just insurance, Ma. My stomach knew better before my eyes did. No, I said. I am not selling my home. A chair scraped on his end. Okay, I'll stall. Title officer had questions anyway. Don't sign anything. If you can, come with ID. Now. How long can you hold them? As long as it takes for a good mother to walk through a door. I put on the gold hoops I wore the day I closed, my good decision earrings. Keys, purse, prayer. I didn't text my daughter. I didn't ask for pretty lies. Memorial Drive thinks it's more important than you. I breathed through traffic like when I was 30 and running mail routes downtown. Betrayal isn't plates breaking. It's an envelope that looks like a bill. It says, let me help, and means let me have. Midtown glass glittered like it had something to prove. I walked into the title office, set my ID on the counter where the camera could see, and smiled the kind of smile that stops trains. I'm the owner of B12, and I am not selling. A receptionist looked up. Can I help you? Yes, I said, and I smiled in that tired way that confuses people who think a smile is permission. I'm here regarding a closing for Unit B12, Willow Run. I'm the owner. I took out my driver's license and set it down where I knew the camera could see, and I am not selling. I didn't say anything else. I've learned in all this living that some things are better left to the power of silence and a good stare. The receptionist went pale around the mouth and picked up the phone. Somewhere down the corridor behind her, a door opened. A woman in a navy dress came toward me, hand out, shoes that made that sound good shoes make when they've walked across carpet that's expensive enough to make a sound. Miss Carter, she said, and I could tell from the relief in her eyes that Darius had already spoken to her. I'm Elena Delgado, senior title officer. Let's step into my office. We went into a glass room where the city tried to show off in the windows like a man used to being watched. Ms. Delgado closed the door. On the table were a red folder, a tablet, a dish of mints. On one wall hung a framed map of old Fulton County, the kind that reminds you how new money really is. First, she said, I am so glad you are here. Second, I need to confirm something with you for the record. Are you attempting to sell your property located at 147 Willow Run, Unit B12? No, I said. Has anyone been given power of attorney to sign on your behalf for the sale of this property? No. Has anyone asked you to sign documents recently that you were told were for something else? I thought about the envelope. White, with a green logo in the corner that looked like a little house growing out of a check mark. My daughter, Patrice, standing in my kitchen, her shoulders shiny with lotion, saying, sign here and here and here, Ma. It's for your policy. I'm switching you to a cheaper plan. Me squinting because the font on those e-docs is always rude. Me trusting my own child. The pen that wasn't mine in my hand. Yes, I said. 3 weeks ago, I was told it was homeowner's insurance. Miss Delgado's mouth flattened. Do you have the name of the agent, the policy number, any paperwork? All I have is the envelope and what my daughter told me. She nodded. Okay, we're going to sort this out. She picked up the red folder. I would like to show you several documents we were presented this morning, a listing agreement, a contract for sale, and a durable power of attorney for real property. This POA appears to have been notarized a month ago. It gives your daughter the ability to sell the property and receive the proceeds on your behalf. She opened the folder to the copy and slid it toward me. Is this your signature? The letters were mine and not mine. My name has a way of leaning into itself, like it's trying to hug the little girl who wrote it in blue Bic pens on black and white composition books long before she had a husband, long before she had a daughter, long before she had a mortgage or a grief with its own zip code. On this page, The letters had tried to stand up straight to impress a stranger. The L looked like it had been ironed. The M lost its little loop where my wrist always gets tired. No, that's a copy of me. My hands shook then, but in that fine way that comes when you are both humiliated and furious, which is a cocktail older women know better than champagne. My daughter had me sign something 3 weeks ago. I did not read it close enough. That's on me, but this is not my signature. She nodded. I appreciate your clarity. She turned to the tablet and tapped. I'm going to step out and stall the parties. We will not proceed today. You have every right to your home and to your feelings. If you are willing, I'd like you to stay while we... She stopped. The door behind me clicked. I turned. Patrice stood framed in the glass like a woman in a magazine ad for a life we no longer shared. My daughter has my cheekbones and her father's eyes. When she was born, Earl said she looked like a soft peach, and we both cried because somehow we had made a person. Now she stood in a dress the color of money and a blazer the color of a courtroom. Her hair was in a sleek bun that advertised competence and control. Beside her was a man whose teeth were too white for an honest life, and a woman I recognized as a real estate agent from the rise in her voice when she said hello to strangers. "Ma?" Patrice said, then stopped when she saw my face. You didn't know I was the owner of my own home?" I asked. She flushed, just a flicker, then she recovered. Patrice can turn her shame into indignation so fast it'll give you whiplash. "This is a misunderstanding," she told Miss Delgado, "ignoring me the way you ignore a chair you don't intend to sit in. My mother gave me power of attorney last month. We've been talking about moving her to a place with better services. The stairwell here is steep. She's at 2 near falls. We found a lovely independent living facility near our house in Buckhead with on-site nursing and gourmet meals. We're just trying to be proactive." Miss Delgado did not blink. "We will not be closing today, Miss Miles." "Excuse me?" Patrice's voice went up 1 octave. Her husband shifted, then put his hands in his pockets like men do when they want to look like they didn't just kick a puppy. "This is time sensitive. The buyer has a 1031 exchange window. We have movers scheduled. My mother is getting care. This is all very proper." Miss Delgado glanced at me. I nodded once, and she took it like permission. "The owner of record is present and has not consented to the sale. We will not be closing. Additionally, I have concerns about the validity of the power of attorney presented." She lifted a page. "This notary seal belongs to a notary who is no longer commissioned. Her commission expired last year." Patrice laughed a little, that brittle sorority laugh that sounds like the clink of an empty crystal glass. "Well, that's on the notary, not on us," she said. "Can we just—" "We will not be closing," Miss Delgado repeated. She pressed a button on her phone. "Carlos, please escort Miss Carter to the smart conference room. Keep her comfortable. I will be with her shortly." She looked at me. "Don't go anywhere. You are safe here." I stood. My daughter reached for my arm, fingers cool, nails coordinated with her lipstick like a magazine page. "Ma," she said in her softer voice, the one she used when she wanted to hold my wrist the way a police officer does, but make it feel like a hug. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "Why didn't you tell me you were selling my home?" I asked, and gently pulled my elbow free. There are things I could have said right then about trust, about the way my body went cold the night she showed up with a folder and told me not to worry, about the box of mail I found under her jacket the last time she visited, mail with my name on it, about the way she used we when she meant I, and care when she meant control, and policy when she meant profit. I could have said it all. Instead, I followed a man in a navy blazer to a smaller room with a quieter view and closed the door. I sat and breathed. The world steadied. Miss Delgado came a minute later. She set a glass of water in front of me. "The buyer is on hold. He is very cooperative. He seems concerned for you." I said Darius. "He's a good man." She nodded. "I'm going to call the notary whose seal is on this document. It looks like she left the state last year. I'm also going to call the broker of record for the listing agent. Regardless, nothing happens today. If you would like, we can contact an attorney while you're here. I have a list of elder law specialists we trust. We can also talk to the police department's financial crimes division to make a report, if that is your wish." I looked at my hands. They are my mother's hands, brown and strong, a little swollen at the knuckles, the veins like small maps. They have white noses and pack lunches and sign permission slips and checks and marriage certificates and condolence cards,
and the occasional letter I was glad nobody kept after all. They have buried a husband. They have held the air when the air was all I had. I would like to call my friend, I said, and Miss Delgado nodded like that was the most sensible request she'd had all week. I dialed Joe first, because if there is a person in your life who will cut through panic like it's smoke and hand you a cup of coffee like a medicine, that is the person you call. Joe lives 2 doors down. She retired from Grady's billing department 5 years ago and knows more about paperwork than God. She said, "Say no more, I'm on my way," and hung up.
It is one thing to know a wrong is happening to you. It is another thing to feel how thin the line is between a life you made for yourself and the sinkhole of someone else's choices. Sitting in that glass room, watching the sun try to do its job over Midtown, I thought about how easily I could have been moved out of my home with a smile and a brochure. I thought about how many women I know who trust their children because that is what we are taught to do, and how many envelopes I've signed because I did not want to be difficult. How many times in the last year my daughter said "we" when she asked for access to my accounts, when she offered to set up auto pay for my utilities so you don't forget and get a late fee, when she asked for a copy of my driver's license for the file. How easy it is for theft to wear our kids' faces. "Miss Carter," Miss Delgado said gently, "would it help if I had the buyer come in and say hello?" He asked if he could step in for a moment. I nodded because for some reason I needed to see the boy who used to ask for seconds and the man he'd become, standing in the middle of this mess I did not invite. He came in with his hat in his hands like a country boy visiting someone's mama. He wasn't wearing a hat, but that was the feeling of it. Tall, broad shoulders, a beard that tried to make him look older than he is. When he smiled, my kitchen 23 years ago came back like it had been waiting in the parking lot. "Hey, Miss Leela," he said, eyes bright with worry. "You look good." I look like someone who had a Tuesday and got a Thursday. It was a sentence Earl would have liked. He laughed because he knew my rhythms the way you know the sound of your own floorboards. "You saved me more afternoons than you know," he said softly, then gestured at the folder on the table. Figured it was my turn. "Baby," I said, and my voice broke in half, and we stood there in a narrow room where nothing was supposed to happen except signatures, and we had something holy anyway. After he left, Miss Delgado shut the door again. She rolled her chair close. This time, her professional voice softened into something like family. "I see these cases. Not every week, but enough. Children, nieces, uncles, a neighbor's helper, a caregiver with a key. They confuse kindness with permission. They confuse proximity with power. The good news is you came, and you're here, and you said no. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it last year when Patrice asked for my online banking login, just in case. I should have said it when she asked me to make her an authorized user on my credit card for emergencies. I should have said it when she told me I didn't need to worry about reading the fine print. That's hindsight talking. Hindsight drinks gin and says it knew better the whole time. You're here now. That's what matters." Joe arrived like a short storm, wearing her blue visor and her no-nonsense face. She hugged me without asking if I wanted a hug. She is one of maybe 3 people in this world who can hug me without asking permission. She said, "Let's handle this," looking around like she expected a fight and would be disappointed if she didn't get one. She shook Miss Delgado's hand hard enough to leave an impression and then sat down like she was clocking in. By 2 o'clock, the sale was dead. Miss Delgado called the notary whose name was on the POA and learned she'd moved to North Carolina. That woman answered the phone sounding startled to hear her Georgia stamp had been at work without her. Miss Delgado called the broker for the listing agent and mentioned the words fraud risk and E&O policy, which are the holy water and garlic of real estate. The agent stopped sounds. Darius rescheduled his 1031 exchange path with a Plan B property he jokingly called the Lord's Delay. I made an appointment with an elder law attorney named Corinne who had kind eyes and a voice like a lullaby sung by someone who watched a lot of court TV. I signed nothing except the visitor log on my way out. Patrice never came into the small conference room. I do not know where she went. I waited for the text that would say, "You didn't have to embarrass me," or "We only want what's best," or "This is a misunderstanding," and it didn't come. Her husband Evan sent one message at 3:14. "We need to talk about next steps." I did not reply. Joe drove me home because she said the city had soaked into my shoulders and I needed a friend to wring it out. We passed Piedmont Park, where people were pretending they weren't thinking about their emails. We passed the old bank where Earl and I opened an account when we were 24 with $96 and the kind of optimism that makes a cashier say, "You two are going to be trouble."
We passed the street where Westview Church used to sit before the tornado took its tin roof and the developers took the rest. I felt it all like pebbles in a cup. At Willow Run, we pulled into the lot. I saw something that made my hands go cold on the seatbelt. There was a sign in front of my building, not up for sale, that had been taken down. A small yard sign on a metal H stake that said Estate Services with a phone number underneath. As if I had died. Joe swore in a church way that is mostly air and eyebrows. Do not touch that. Take a picture. We'll send it to your attorney.
So I did. I took a picture of a sign pretending I was gone, and all the worst parts of my life were furniture to be tagged and sold. Then I went inside my condo, my little living room with the thrifted blue armchair and the quilt on the back of the couch, my kitchen with the pot that belonged to my mother and the dented lid that belonged to nobody, my bedroom with the 2 pillows and the one I never used since Earl died, and I sat down. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't call my daughter. I filled a glass with water, put 2 ice cubes in so it would clink the way my nerves needed, and I drank it. There's something about drinking water after a near crime that feels like taking your house back one swallow at a time. I wish I could tell you that everything after that was simple, that we reported it, that she apologized, that we hugged and learned and ate pie and the church thing about reconciliation. But families aren't sermons. They're weather. They move in patterns that don't make sense unless you keep track of them for years. I slept a little that night. I dreamed of my mother's kitchen in Selma, the screen door banging, the smell of hot dirt and okra, and her voice saying, "Baby, you call a thing by its name or it'll live in your house for free." In the morning, I walked down to Joe's with a folder of everything I could find. Copies of my deed, my tax bill, the envelope I'd signed 3 weeks ago, a stack of mail I'd retrieved from the leasing office because the postal carrier said my forwarding had been changed as requested. Requested by whom? Joe had brewed coffee that tasted like she was trying to fix something with Dean's and a prayer. She put it in front of me and took my folder and made a hum that meant she was finding the bones in the mess. She said, flipping. "Here it is. Your Patrice set up an online USPS change of address. They let you do it for a parent now. Says it was verified by a credit card in her name." She looked at me over the half glasses she put on when she meant business. "We're going to reverse that. Today." We sat at her kitchen table and called the post office and waded through a lineup of hold music that sounded like it had been recorded underwater. We answered security questions, we verified my favorite color and the street I grew up on and the name of the first dog I never had. We followed it with a call to my bank, who informed me Patrice had added herself as a view-only trusted contact to help in emergencies. We removed her. We changed my online banking to a longer password than any sinner would guess and set up 2-factor authentication that sent a code to a phone only a person named Leela May could find in her purse. We called my electric company and my water bill and my HOA and the Medicare supplement plan that always calls me Miss Lily and makes me want to stick my head in the aquarium at the community center. We moved through it like you move through a field of briars, one step at a time, knowing it will scrape you, doing it anyway. In the afternoon, Karen, the elder law attorney, called. "Miss Carter, I've reviewed what the title officer sent. This looks like attempted real estate fraud facilitated through a forged power of attorney. We can file a report with the police. We can also issue a formal letter to the broker and to your daughter demanding she cease and desist any attempts to act on your behalf. If you allow, I'd also like to help you set up protective documents that are real. A living will, a medical power of attorney for someone you actually trust, and a revocable trust for your property that you control and can revoke. That way, if anyone tries this again, they'll run into a wall with your name on it. Make it brick. Make it sharp." She laughed softly. "I will draft it with teeth." The police report was a small, cold thing compared to the size of what I felt. The detective who came by the next day, a black woman about Patrice's age named Morgan, looked at the papers and her mouth did that thing women's mouths do when they would like to say bad words, but they are trying to keep their jobs. She said, "You would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't. It's always someone close. The durable, indurable power of attorney just means it keeps working if the person loses capacity. It doesn't mean it's rubber to be stretched until it covers someone else's greed. Do you want to press charges if we can prove forgery? I thought about my daughter's face at age 8, when she told me she'd be a judge and made me buy her a little black robe for Halloween. I thought about 18 when she brought home a boy with a grin that meant trouble,
and said, "He's different." 28 when she cried in my kitchen because the IVF took twice and she was scared to be happy. We put our hands on her belly and prayed because that's something we do even when we don't always believe the way we used to. 35 when she borrowed $10,000 for the studio and paid back 2.5 and then treated the rest like it had evaporated. 42 last month when she stood in my living room and turned my home into a business plan. I want a paper trail. I want you to do what's right by the law. And I want my daughter to meet herself in the mirror.
Detective Morgan nodded. We'll start with the notary and the paper. The paper always tells on the person who thought it was their friend. That evening, my phone lit up. It was Patrice. I hope you're happy, the message read. We had to cancel everything. We were trying to make your life easier and you made it harder, like you always do. This is why we can't include you in plans. You panic, you embarrass me, you choose strangers over family. Do you even love your grandchildren? I stared at that little ocean in my phone, where words float and sometimes drown. She used plural again. We. She did not say the word sorry because it has never been her friend. I typed the simplest thing I could. I typed it like it weighed the same as the truth and no more. Do not touch my home, I wrote. Do not sign my name. We will handle any legal questions through my attorney. She wrote back immediately. You're being manipulated. That title lady doesn't know us. That buyer man is trying to steal your equity. You don't understand how this works. I put the phone face down. The ferns needed water. 2 days later, I was in the church parking lot because Sister Ruth, who has been a pastor for as long as I've had a back that hurts, asked me to help set out the folding chairs for the grief class. I like that class because it doesn't try to fix you. It just lets you sit with the women whose husbands also forgot to take their blood pressure meds and the women whose wives brought them coffee every morning and then didn't. A silver SUV slid into a spot like it owned the asphalt. Patrice stepped out wearing an outfit that made the teenagers across the lot look at her and then look down at their sneakers like they were checking who they'd grow into. Ma, she said, as if the word could do pull-ups. Hello, Patrice, I said. I put a stack of chairs down and wiped my forehead like a person who has been setting out chairs for grief. She came closer. I could smell the perfume I bought her last Christmas. You embarrassed me at the closing. No hello, no how are you. You turned those people against me. They were talking to me like I was a criminal. Do you know how that felt? I expect it felt like you thought I would feel when I came home to find a moving truck I didn't hire. Her jaw tightened. You were never going to actually move into that condo, Ma. It's small. The appliances are old. The HOA fees are ridiculous. You would have been better off at Brookside. Chef-prepared meals, on-call nurses, activities. We were going to surprise you. Honey, I said gently, you cannot surprise someone into losing their home. That's not a surprise. That's a theft with a cupcake on top. She flinched. She hated being called honey when she was wrong. We were in a time crunch. The buyer had a deadline. Evan's cousin knows the listing agent. It was an opportunity. We were trying to protect your equity in a recession. Do you know what interest rates are? Do you even understand? I understand, I said. And my voice carried a quiet I have learned to use the way some people use a megaphone. I understand you changed my address with the post office. I understand you added yourself to my online banking. I understand you had me sign something you told me was insurance. I understand a notary stamp showed up on a paper she never stamped. I understand you were selling my home out from under me in the middle of a weekday like I was dead. She recoiled like I had slapped her. You always do this. Turn everything into the worst thing. Why do you always assume I'm out to get you? Why can't you accept that I am the only person in this family who thinks 3 steps ahead? Jamal and Zora need stability. We were going to use some of the proceeds to pay down the HELOC because Evan's studio has been slow. We were going to put a chunk into an annuity for you. It was all planned. There it was. The we that meant me. The planned that meant spent. The grandchildren used like angel wings on a devil. I felt something in me shift, a piece of ballast moving to keep me from capsizing. This is my boundary. It is firm. It is brick. Do not move it. You do not have access to my accounts. You do not have my permission to sign anything in my name. You do not tell people at offices who have never met me that you speak for me. If you think I'm making a poor decision, you can tell me. I will listen. But you will not drag me across a river I did not agree to cross and then tell me the view is better from over there. She crossed her arms. If you felt like this, you could have said something years ago. I did. In little ways and little times.
You didn't hear me because the yes you wanted was louder than any no I had. Hear this one. It is not little.
Her eyes got wet. I had not seen my daughter cry like that since the twins were tiny and the pediatrician told her Zora needed a little helmet for a flat spot and she heard failure when he said precaution. For a second, I saw the 11-year-old who didn't get the lead in the school play and cried in my lap and said she was ugly. And then the second passed. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand hard enough to smear her eyeliner. I can't believe you chose a stranger over me, she said. That man at the closing, calling you mom to manipulate you. He doesn't know you. He doesn't care about you. Baby, I said softly. He knew what soup was on Tuesdays 23 years ago when you were at ballet and I was washing dishes in a church kitchen so kids would have 10 minutes of warmth before they went back to the lives they had. He called me mom because that was who I was to him when nobody else was. That boy wasn't a stranger then and he isn't now. So you're adopting him, she scoffed, replacing me? I'm not replacing you, I said. I'm replacing the part of me that let you treat me like paperwork. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, with a little laugh that had no humor in it, she said, "You're going to regret this," like she had rehearsed the line in a mirror and liked the way it fit. No, I said, I already did. And I walked away because I was going to be late for grief, and grief was the thing that had taught me when to stop talking. You don't come back from a near theft of your life and not scan every horizon for a while. I watch my bank accounts the way you watch a pot that you know is about to boil, not because boiling is dangerous, but because it signals the moment everything changes. I waited for the detective's call. I waited to see if Patrice's husband would call or if his silence would be the shape of his opinion. I watered my ferns like they were telling me secrets. I texted Darius a picture of the grilled cheese I made on Sunday, and he sent back a picture of a floor plan and a caption that said, "I like this one better anyway." Corinne came by with papers. I initialed and signed and sipped water and took breaks when the words blurred. This one gives your friend Joe medical power of attorney if you and only you say so. This one puts your condo into a trust that uses your social security number now, but can be protected later. This one says nobody moves you or sells what you own without your mouth making the words. This one revokes any power of attorney that is not this one. It feels like building a fence, I said. It is, she said, but it's also like planting a garden. You choose what grows. Detective Morgan called a week later. We've interviewed the notary, she said. She says she did not stamp that document. The commission number was copied from an old deed she notarized years ago. The stamp impression is a match, but the ink is not. The handwriting on the notary line is not hers. We requested the notary journal from the person who notarized the paper you signed 3 weeks ago for insurance. They don't have a record for that date for your signature. We've subpoenaed the email used for the electronic signature. A lot of breadcrumbs. We like breadcrumbs. Do you have a bakery section for mothers who want to pretend this is a misunderstanding? I asked, and we both laughed in that way you do when the joke is made of bone. We will present this to the DA, she said. If there are charges, we'll let you know. Even if not, the report stands. That alone sometimes changes behavior. Sometimes. I didn't see Patrice for a month. She sent a few texts, all of them arguing with themselves, cycling through sad, then angry, then victim, then coach, then victim again. I answered none. Jamal, my grandson, called from his college apartment where the smoke detector was chirping and nobody knew which battery to change. "Grandma, I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know everything, but I know enough to tell you I see you. I see you too, baby. I see you remembering to call me when you don't need money. That is a miracle. Want me to come by and fix your smoke detector just so I can feel useful?" He joked. And we agreed he would bring me coffee on Saturday and check the batteries at my place anyway, because being useful is its own kind of prayer. Somewhere in that month, the world went on. I took my painting class at the senior center and learned I am good at trees and terrible at faces. I went to the farmer's market and bought tomatoes that tasted like somebody finally found August and bottled it. I took my little folding chair to Stone Mountain Park and sat at the lake and watched light move like God was a kid playing with foil. Darius stopped by one afternoon with a bag of sub sandwiches and a roll of permits under this arm. He unrolled them on my kitchen table like mats to treasure. "Look at this," he said, face bright. "I got that other building on Memorial, the one with the busted plumbing and the mural on the side nobody wants to paint over. You know what I'm going to do?" He looked up like a boy about to share a secret with his Sunday school teacher. "I'm going to keep the mural. I want the kids who walk past to see their faces stay." "You're going to do good," I said. "You already are." He paused, then looked at me hard. "You okay?" I thought about lying. I thought about the way mothers of daughters learn to say fine while bleeding. Then I told the truth. Some days
I look at my phone and wish it would stay quiet forever and also ring at the same time. Some days I want to throw all the paperwork in the trash and start walking and not stop until I hit the ocean.
He nodded like a man who was sat on both sides of the table where people get broken and put back together. "You want to come see the mural?" he asked. I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I want to see something that outlives a bad decision." We drove over at 4, the hot part of the day yawning into something softer. The mural was a collection of faces, black and brown, a few white, some with freckles, some with braids, old and young, a teacher holding a book, a kid holding a basketball, a woman with a CPR mask in one hand and a child's shoulder in the other. At the bottom left, a painted hand held a bowl. It was red like tomato soup. "Who painted this?" I asked, throat tight. "His sisters from down on Auburn," he said. "Said they grew up on grilled cheese." He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. I put my hand against that bowl and let my palm cool on the brick. "You expect me to tell you I know whether Patrice got arrested, whether I pressed charges, whether she apologized on her knees, whether the church ladies made her bring potato salad to a potluck and sit in front and listen to a sermon about honor thy mother and father and the part where it says that your days may be long." It didn't happen like that. Real life turned itself out slowly like a pocket. The DA sent a letter that said words like insufficient evidence to prosecute at this time, and civil remedies available, and warning issued. It meant what I already knew. You cannot always make the law turn toward you when the person who wronged you lived inside your own phone. But there was a record now, and what I wanted more than a prosecution was a boundary that didn't have to be taped off every morning. 6 weeks after the almost closing, a box arrived on my doorstep. Brown paper, my name in my daughter's handwriting. Joe was with me. We brought it inside and put it on the table like it might bite. I cut the tape with a butter knife because I am who I am and my knives are where my knives are. Inside was a stack of papers, copies of my birthday cards to Patrice, photos from when she was 4 and in overalls, a report card with a gold star, and a check, $5,000. Memo line, start. The letter on top was written with a pen that made her handwriting neat, the way a haircut makes some men honest for a week. "Ma," it began, "I don't know how to undo what I did. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if money means anything after everything, but I'm going to start where I should have started 10 years ago, by paying you back for every time I told myself I was borrowing when I was stealing pieces of your peace. This is not forgiveness. I don't deserve it. This is admissions. Evan and I are in counseling. I am in counseling. I am working a program that says the first step is to call a thing by its name." I read it all the way through. Some of it was sincere. Some of it was the language women learned to put around their bad behavior like a scarf. Joe watched my face like she was looking for weather. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to put the check in the drawer," I said. "I'm going to see if the second one comes without fireworks attached." It did. In fact, for the next 6 months, an envelope arrived on the first of the month with a cashier's check for $1,000. No note, no lecture, no strings. Sometimes the envelope carried a faint smell of whatever perfume department she had walked through on her way to buy stamps. Sometimes it smelled like nothing, like paper and glue. I deposited them. I did not text. I did not use them for anything fancy. I paid my light bill. I brought groceries. I donated a little to the church pantry where the food is never fancy but always good. 3 months in, Jamal came by with coffee and a hammer. He hung a new shelf in my kitchen and then took the old one down and sanded the line where ugliness had lived. He told me his mama was angry, then quiet, then tender, then mad again. He said he was staying out of it. He said he loved me. He said he loved her too. He said nobody ever teaches you that loving 2 people who don't like each other is like trying to stand with your feet in 2 different boats. Wear a life jacket, I said, and he laughed so hard he had to sit down. Somewhere in those months, the shape of my life changed without asking permission. The mornings were mine in a way they hadn't been while I was sitting under the weight of someone else's plans. I watered the ferns and they forgave me for the days I forgot. I learned to make a lemon pound cake that made people close their eyes for a second and say, "Lord," even when they were not the praying kind. I took a day trip to Savannah with Joe and we walked along the river and smelled the salt and pointed out dogs like we were picking them from a catalog.
I stood on my porch in the evening and watched the sun turn my building the color of a penny and thought this was mine. I bought it with shift work and patience and a man who loved me and 100 little sacrifices nobody applauded. No paper could take that from me if I kept my eyes open. In January, on a day when the wind remembered how to bite, I got a call from a number I knew by heart. Mama, Patrice said. Not Ma, not mother, but Mama, like she was 6 and I had a cold cloth for her forehead. Can I come by? You will ask me why I said yes. Because blood is complicated. Because I am not a dragged chair, I am a person. Because time has a way of softening the edges on both our stubbornnesses until they can fit in the same room without cutting anyone. Because I missed my daughter, even while I wanted to claw her name out of my phone some days. 2:00, I said. Joe will be here. We'll have coffee. There is some punishments we wield without needing a judge. Having Joe there meant there would be a witness. It meant Patrice would not spin like a top and call it ballet. It meant I could be firm without raising my voice. It meant if my heart fell out of my chest by accident, somebody would pick it up and put it back while I pretended I was fine. Patrice came in looking like a woman who had learned how to wear humility without trying to bedazzle it. No blazer, no courtroom colors, a cream sweater, jeans, boots with salt on them from a parking lot that hadn't been generous with gravel. She sat and put her hands around the mug I set down, like a person who had been taught to warm themselves with what's offered. I was wrong, she said without preface. The words landed like a bird that wasn't sure if the branch would hold. I want to start there so you don't think I'm going to circle the block like I usually do. I was wrong. What I did was wrong. I told myself it was care. It was control. I told myself it was planning. It was theft. I told myself you'd thank me later. You didn't owe me thanks. I looked at her and saw all the people who had made her. Me, Earl, the schools, the boyfriends, the jobs, the country. She'd always wanted to be better than her choices. Sometimes she was. Sometimes she wasn't. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. It unraveled a little the way she is sometimes unraveled and then knitted herself back up. Why? I asked. Not a knife, just a spoon. Why? She looked down. Because we were in debt, she said. Because the studio isn't what we said it was going to be. Because I wanted to live a life that made me feel like I'd made it out of who we were when I was a kid. Because I think every problem is a nail and I am a hammer. Because if I could get you set somewhere nice with nurses and a cafeteria, I could manage the guilt of not checking on you. Because the condo felt like cash in a box. Because I didn't want to be the kind of daughter who asked for money, so I decided I'd be the kind of daughter who takes control, and I called it love. Because I didn't think you'd say yes if I asked right. Because I thought my yeses were smarter than your no. There's a kind of apology that changes the room. It's not the one that says, I'm sorry, but. It's not the one that says, I'm sorry you feel. It's the one that says, I wanted something and I tried to get it the wrong way. The room shifted a little. Joe sipped her coffee and didn't say a word, the way friends don't when the air is busy with something delicate. I can't promise you that I will never reach for control when I should reach for a hand. I can't promise you that I won't try to fix something in a way that breaks it. I can promise you that I will not touch your paperwork again. I can promise you that if the day comes when you need help, you cannot name it, I will ask you to name it. If you cannot, I will bring Joe and your pastor and an attorney with eyes, and we will figure it out. And I can promise you that if you want me to leave right now and never cross your threshold until you invite me, I'll listen. It is hard to explain what softening feels like when you have been holding yourself like a wall for months. It hurts first, like thaw. Then it warms into a thing that feeds. I reached across the table and took her hand, and it fit where it always has, in that valley between my thumb and forefinger that knows her shape. I accept your apology, I said. You can come for Sunday dinner next week. You can bring the kids. Do not bring a bag of papers. Bring rolls from that bakery on Moreland that knows what yeast is for. She laughed, a real one this time. The sound I used to hear when she took off her backpack and let her day fall off her shoulders by our door. Yes, ma'am, she said. She left an hour later. Joe exhaled like a woman who had been holding her breath. You done good, as she said. I didn't do anything, I said. You did the hardest thing. You let something live. Darius called that afternoon. Can I bring by something? I said, "You can bring by anything." He arrived with a frame about 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Inside was a print of the mural. The faces smiling like they knew what I would need on the days when the letters from the DA arrived and didn't say what I wanted them to say. He had circled the painted hand with the bowl. "You hang it," I said, handing him the hammer, because sometimes it is a gift to let someone help you.
He hung it on my hallway wall where I would see it every time I went to bed and every time I got up. He stepped back. We looked at it together. The bowl glowed just a little in the afternoon light, like the painter had tucked a piece of sunset in the red. "Want to know something?" he asked. "Always," I said. "When I was a kid," he said, "I didn't have a word for why soup mattered. It wasn't the food, though that helped. It was the way you would hand me that bowl like I had a place at a table in a world that had locked a lot of doors on me. When the title lady called me to say there was a problem and maybe I should walk away from the deal, all I could think was, who handed her the bowl when she needed it? I don't know if this means anything to you, but I wanted to hand you back something, even if it's just this picture." "It means I will never forget your name," I said. "It means my hallway is blessed. It means when I am 85 and forget where I put my keys, I'll still know what red tastes like." He smiled. "Keep your phone on," he said. "I'm going to call you when the mural building opens. I want you to cut the ribbon. I'll wear my good earrings," I said. Spring came like it always does, stubborn, late, then all at once. The ferns revived. The HOA sent me a letter about the color of my front door, and I rolled my eyes and decided to repaint it anyway, because the world is full of small stubbornnesses and I can only keep so many. Patrice brought rolls on Sunday and made the kind of salad that looks like it belongs in a magazine and tastes like the picture. Zora came by after school and tried on my earrings like she was trying on her grandmother in the mirror. Jamal came to fix my drawer again and ate half the pound cake before I got to the part where I pretend I'm mad. I did cash the checks. Month after month, they came. Sometimes there was an extra 100 tucked in with a sticky note that said, "For flowers," or "For that little dress you looked at." I did not spend those. I put them in an envelope and labeled it, "Thank you," one day. I don't know what day that is yet. Maybe it's for a gift for Darius when the building opens. Maybe it's for a bus trip to the coast with the seniors so we can stare at the water like it's a sermon. Maybe it's for nothing. Maybe the act of tucking thank yous away is the point. On a day in June, when the heat was polite for a few hours in the morning, I went to the cemetery to talk to Earl. I talked to my husband's stone the way some people talk to God, convinced he is listening because sometimes I hear myself say something I needed to hear. "I almost lost the house you never knew," I told him. "Our girl almost sold it. And then a boy we fed years ago picked up the phone and said, 'Mom, the world is ridiculous and also beautiful. You wouldn't believe the things that fit inside a day.' A breeze moved through the pines. I could have pretended it was him. I didn't. I took it as what it was. Pine air, early June, the smell of cut grass, the knowledge that I was still here, that the house was still mine, that I could go home to a hallway covered in faces and a kitchen that remembers. The dead are their own country, but they like visitors. You want to know the moral. We always do. We want to hold on to a sentence and wave it at ourselves later when the next test comes. Here is mine, spoken like a woman who has signed too many things and then rewired the signing hand. There is a difference between being loved and being managed. I let myself be managed because I thought it meant I was being cared for. It didn't. It meant somebody was tidying me away to make their own picture prettier. Love doesn't tidy the living away. It makes room for the mess and calls it home. Another thing, people say blood is thicker than water, like it means we must always choose family. The whole saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the blood we shed together for what is right can mean more than the water we floated in before we had a name. You can build family where people are willing to bleed for you or at least make soup. It is not betrayal to love the ones who showed up when other people were counting your spoons. One more thing, because the older I get, the more things I collect. Build your fence when you can still choose the color. We wait until we are weak to write down what we want, and then act surprised when our hands are not strong enough to hold the pen. Set your papers in order while you are still steady. Pick your people. Tell them where your keys are. Put your bank in a password book the devil himself couldn't guess, and tell one human you trust where to find it.
The buyer called me Mom, and it startled my heart awake. But the truth is, that moment didn't save me. I saved me. When I got in the car, when I walked into a building and said no in a polite voice that could stop a train, when I put boundaries on a table and asked my daughter if she could read, when I told the police I wanted a paper trail, when I watered the ferns, when I went to grief with folding chairs and listened to other women tell the truth without trying to fix it. One night in August, right when the light at 7 o'clock does that thing where it lays gold on the floor like a blanket, I heard a knock. I opened the door and found a piece of red ribbon and a note that said, "Tomorrow at 10, bring scissors." The next morning, we stood in front of the memorial building with a handful of city people and a handful of neighbors and the sisters who painted the mural and a news camera that tried to make me look brave. Darius handed me the scissors like they were a torch. The ribbon was shiny in a way that tried to compete with that bowl. "Say something," he whispered. "I'm not a say-something person," I hissed back. "Today you are," he smiled. I cleared my throat. "Thank you," I said to the crowd, then looked at the mural. The faces looked back like a choir singing without moving their mouths. There was a day a while back when someone tried to sell something of mine without asking me. Another person made one phone call and stopped it. He called me Mom because sometimes family is what you feed and not what you birth. Today, we open a building that is going to feed people. I looked out at the kids perched on bikes and the women with grocery bags in their elbows and the old men in hats with feathers. We're going to feed them housing that doesn't move when the rent moves. We're going to feed them rooms where the art on the walls looks like the faces inside. We're going to feed them time. Time to figure out who they are before somebody tries to tell them. Thank you for letting me cut the ribbon with the same hand that stirred soup a long time ago. The scissors made that satisfying crunch when they go through thick ribbon. People clapped. The city man shook my hand and told me about tax credits like he was offering me cookies. I smiled and pretended I was at a bake sale while I translated his words into human. Darius hugged me hard. Later, we walked around the corner and he leaned against the brick and cried in a way men don't let themselves unless they are very safe or very broken open. I stood with him and let my blouse get damp on the shoulder because fabric was made for that. As we stood there, my phone buzzed. It was Patrice. "Saw you on Channel 2. You looked happy. I'm glad." A second bubble appeared. "Can we bring peach cobbler Sunday?" And then another. "No papers, just dessert." I laughed out loud. "Yes," I typed. "Bring 2. Joe eats like a field hand when it comes to cobbler." I went home and stood in my hallway and looked at my framed print of the mural. I pressed my fingers to that painted red bowl like a person who needs to be steady. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee grounds, like home. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet. It wasn't empty. It was full of the better noises. The hum of the fridge that means the food is cold, the far-off laughter of kids in the courtyard, the slow, sure thump of a woman's heart who did not sign her name away. That night, before bed, I sat at my little table and wrote a letter. Not to Patrice, not to Darius, not to the detective or the title lady. To myself. Dear Leela May. Today, you are the person you needed when you were 40 and thought saying yes was the only way to keep love in the room. Today, you built a fence and painted it a color you like. Today, you held a ribbon and spoke without shaking. Today, your home is yours because you chose it again. If tomorrow comes and asks you to choose again, do that too. I folded it and put it in the drawer with the extra thank yous and the instruction sheet for the smoke detector because Lord help me, I will forget where that battery goes every time. Then I turned out the lamp. The dark was kind. The night held. Months later, long after the cops had filed their report and the lawyer had framed my papers in legal language, I saw the sign again. Not the estate sign, a new sign. A hand-lettered poster in our common room where we put notices for potlucks and line dancing and Bible study. Know your papers night. Bring your documents. Free help from old ladies who bite. The little smiley face someone drew looked like Joe. We sat at a long folding table and looked at women's lives on paper. We told them to keep their social security cards in a place where son-in-laws couldn't take pictures with their phones. We told them to keep a copy of the deed and the mortgage and scan them to their own email, not to the family account. We told them to set passwords that were not their grandchildren's birthdays. We told them to choose powers of attorney the way you choose a bridge in a storm, sturdy and fixed, not something pretty that sways. We told them to trust and to verify,
and never sign anything because someone is in a hurry. We told them if their daughter ever says, "It's just a signature, Ma," to read the fine print and then have a sandwich and then read it again. Sometimes one of the women would sigh and say, "It's sad it has to be this way." It is, and it isn't. It's sad that love gets confused with control. It's not sad to learn to love yourself in a way that sets you free. One afternoon, after one of those sessions, I came home to find an envelope on my mat. No return address. Inside, a key. A sticky note with 3 words. "For emergencies, Mama." No signature. Though the handwriting wrote its name across the page in a way honest people do even when they're trying to be mysterious. I put the key on my ring next to the one that opens the door to the community room and the one for the mailbox. I know where it came from. I didn't need the name to keep it safe.
Sometimes when the sun is moving across my floor and the house is full of that summer sound of far-off lawnmowers and someone frying something in the next building, I look at my doormat that says, "Bless this mess," and think of how I used to mean the crumbs under the table, and now I mean my whole life. Blessed is the mess that taught me how to sweep. Blessed is the daughter who broke my heart and then handed me the glue. Blessed is the boy who grew up tall enough to call me Mom across a phone line and pull me back to myself. Blessed is the paper that proved what I knew and the people who wrote it in a way nobody could pretend not to see. "Mom," he said that first morning, and I felt the ground tilt and right itself. They tried to sell my retirement home. The buyer called me Mom, and in that one wrong day, I learned all the right ways to keep what's mine. Not just the condo, myself. I didn't lose anything that wasn't already walking out the door. I bought something instead, with boundaries and quiet and a red bowl painted on a brick wall. I bought my peace.